I'm going to do a short video about getting the rear end all prepped and ready to go back in the car. As I mentioned on the other video, the housing is made by Dutchman. And Dutchman is partnered with SpeedTech, and they will build you a rear end housing to whatever width you want, and they will put all of the SpeedTech specific fitments and brackets on there. And from what I can tell, they did a really nice job. They all seem to be in exactly the right place. So very happy with that. You can certainly do it yourself. SpeedTech will sell you the parts to put it on your own rear end, but just to be on the safe side, you want to use a jig that kind of goes through and bolts over here and then goes through and squeezes the whole thing together, so that when you put a lot of heat from the welding into the tubes, it doesn't torque the tubes. And I just didn't have access to one of those, so in this case I just had Dutchman do it. It turned out well. The third member is a Strange 9-inch third member. I think it's a pro iron, so it's the nicer of the two iron options they have. I didn't want to drop the coin to go to aluminum. I don't think I'll need to. It's got a Detroit True-Trac in there, 389 gears, and it's a 35 spline, so it's a step up from the normal number of splines, which is 31. I don't remember. I'm sure everybody watching this will know, but it's a step up. Don't remember off the top of my head. And on the outside, I'll be running a bolt-on floater setup, and that's from MillerBuilt. And so what that's going to do is it's basically going to take a C7 hub and it's going to bolt right to these flanges, and that's going to let me run a spline on both sides. And mainly why I decided to do that was to avoid pad knockback problems. I wanted to try to avoid any scary moments with the brakes if I'm going to use this as a track day car, and that could be one of them. So I'll show those in a little bit after I put them on. I'm going to go ahead and put some manifold dressing on there to keep the third member from rusting. So I was hoping to have a kind of a demo where I put the manifold dressing on one half and left the other half bare, but obviously it's a new third member and it's pretty clean. There's just a couple of rust spots starting, so I wanted to go ahead and get something on it. I don't know if Strange put a coating on this or not, but what I used with this calyx stuff, which is basically not a paint, it's just something that works down into the pores of the cast iron. Let me see if I can open it. It's just like a dark gray, and so you really can't even tell where I put it, basically. But I'm hoping it'll kind of work down in the pores and help protect the cast iron from rusting. But I'll tell you, it has a very distinct smell of like a spearmint bubble gum, and I don't know if that's just which brain cells that it's killing by smelling it or what, but man, you could close your eyes and think this was spearmint bubblegum. But anyways, so I think if this was a much more rusty setup, this would bring back that sort of cast iron gray look, but as it were, in this case, it didn't really need to bring anything back, just trying to keep the rust from happening, since I only live about half a mile from the Chesapeake Bay. So anyways, on to the next thing. Here's a quick video for those of you who want to see inside. This is the mounting face. There was already some rust spots in here, so I just cleaned it up with some Scotch-Brite, and hopefully I'll get that back on quickly. You can see that Strange already set all of the shims and everything to get the correct gear wear pattern on there. There's a couple of gear teeth where they've tried it. All looks good. And then right here, you can see just the tip of one of the helical gears. There's a number of these all the way around. I think there's 5 of them. Yeah, I think there's 5. And they're the magic that makes this work. I'm sure there's another video online that you can look up if you want to know specifics, but there you go. I did some very scientific research online on the forums, of course, and I was trying to figure out what people do with their 9-inch third members. Do they use a gasket? Do they use gasket maker, or do they use a combination? And it was almost a third, a third, a third. So no consensus online. So I just called Strange, and what they recommended was use a gasket and use the gasket maker. I also asked specifically for the iron third member that this is, do I need to use any copper washers on these studs right here? And they said no. For the iron, you do not need the copper washers. And basically they said that would not leak. So we're going to give it a try. I'm going to use the Permatex Ultra Black gasket maker on both sides, a thin coating on both sides of the gasket, maybe put a little bit more on the base of these just for little belt and suspenders. We're going to drop them in and torque it down. Now you got to miss me huffing and puffing and try to heave this sucker in here. It's quite heavy. And now I'm just going to give it an hour to let the gasket maker set up a little bit before I'm going to torque it down to 35 foot-pounds all the way around. All right, as you can see, I've got one axle inserted into the housing all the way down and registered in the splines in the third member. I wanted to talk about what a full floater is and why I chose it, and also a little bit about the particular full floater setup that I chose. So on most axles, GM or Ford otherwise, you got a spline in that goes into the diff over there, and on this end it comes out to what is essentially the hub face, and it looks like that. That's all one piece. And there's some cantilever there, so there's an amount of the axle that sticks out past the bearing, and that takes all of the shear and bending from the wheels. So that can be pretty strong, but one of the things that I was really concerned about is pad knockback, and I spent some time on the phone with Tobin at Core 3, who sells a lot of brakes and is just a real font of knowledge and is a super great guy and will take all the time in the world to explain to you all the stuff he's learned. And he really explained that for the speeds that I was going to be running, doing track days and things, it's not something you really want to worry about is significant pad knockback. And what I mean by that is the axle will actually bend. So as you're braking or as you're accelerating, the axle is bending a little bit, and it's causing the rear discs to push the pads on the pistons, the actual brake pistons, and pull the pads back. And so what that results in at the end of a long straight would be you'd press the brakes and you need more pedal throw to take up the slack that's been caused by that bending of the axle, and that's called pad knockback. So it can be a little disconcerting. So by running a full floater setup, essentially what you've done is you've gotten rid of the axle being the main point to react all those forces, and you've replaced it with an independent hub. And this independent hub takes all the forces, which can be a lot stiffer than the axle because the hub is really closely coupled. And so that's why it's floating. So the axle can literally shift left and right. It floats, or it can float in the housing, and so you have to have some secondary way to retain that. But that's the main reason I went with a floater, not because I'm doing any serious drag racing or anything, was worried about snapping the axle off. So this is the MillerBuilt bolt-on floater setup, and the hub it uses is a C7. A lot of folks out there, kits, will use the C7 hub. I went with MillerBuilt because it's a bolt-on, and one of the original, that's not just the only reason, but there's the way he designs the retainment mechanism is actually a spiral lock. There's a groove right here, and what that would allow you to do is pull his machine cap out and then slide the axle all the way out without taking the hub off to replace the axle. Now, I screwed all that up by going to a 35 spline in the diff, so now the root end of this axle is larger than this, so I will have to end up unbolting it to take it out, but it's removable by unbolting it, so it should be easy to do. I talked to Jay Miller, who came up with this kit, and he's a really knowledgeable guy, fellow engineer, and I was really impressed with the thought he put into it. It's not completely just bolt-on because of the diameter of the C7 hub and just the packaging. You actually have to come in here and slot these holes slightly. He provides you templates, paper templates, you just tape it on, and I'm so impressed with the kit from MillerBuilt because not only does it come with great instructions, but also he provides you pretty much everything you need to do. So he provides you with lube for the axles, he provides you with the Loctite that you need. He also provides you with a burr cutter, and a nice one too. So made in the USA. So in the kit comes the burr cutter for your die grinder that lets you slot those holes. So really super nice. The instructions are really great. So basically all I need to do now that I've inserted the axle into the tube is I take this and bolt it on. And just another note, this is set up so you can run standard Corvette brakes, so C6, C7 brakes, which should make it really compatible with everything else. I'll even give props to Jay at MillerBuilt because he even gives you a bolt which is used to go into the end of the axle to help you insert it. It's just a normal old bolt, but he includes it in the kit, which is super nice, so I didn't have to go running all over the county trying to find this extra long bolt so that I can, you know, wedge that in there. So thumbs up for MillerBuilt. All right, the next step was to kind of pull the axle back out a little bit and install this spiral lock. There's a groove right here, and basically you pull it out enough so that you can slip that spiral lock on there, which is a little fiddly. Kind of, you would think you'd just try to push it on there, but you actually have to separate the two ends to expand the diameter and then kind of slip it over as you go around. A couple of flathead screwdrivers really helps with that. And so now I'm just gonna push this axle back in until the spiral lock kind of flushes up against the ring of the hub. And here's the finishing touch. This is the external hub seal. So you got 4 set screws radially, double O-ring here, and then this little guy is a pipe tap set screw that you pull out so that when the rear end's all sealed up, you can pull this out, and when you press this on, it doesn't compress the air, so it's really just a relief valve. So yeah, take this out, put a little lube in there, slide it in, tighten the set screws down until they're nice and tight, and then tighten that guy in all with Loctite, and then she's all done. All right, and there she is, all built up. Bolt-in floaters in place, third member torqued in, collar torqued in. I still have to shim this to get the driveline angles right, but we'll make that in the rear suspension video. So there you go.